There's a place in the world where if you cut a tree, red blood like liquid flows out. And that place is Socotra Island, but that's just the beginning because the entire island looks like something from an alien planet. Hey everyone, I am Sabah and today we are exploring one of the most mysterious places on earth. What if I told you that over a third of the plant life here exists nowhere else on earth? This is Socotra, a remote island hidden in the Arabian Sea, off the coast of Yemen, so isolated for millions of years that its trees, plants, and animals evolved in ways found nowhere else on our planet. Often called the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean, Socotra is one of the most biologically unique places on Earth. Today I am taking you on a journey through its alien-like landscapes, bizarre wildlife, ancient culture, and the serious threat it faces today.
Before we can understand why Socotra looks the way it does, we need to understand where it came from, literally, geologically. Socotra is an archipelago, a group of islands, located roughly 380 kilometers south of mainland Yemen and about 240 kilometers east of Somalia. It sits at the mouth of the Gulf of Aden, right where the Arabian Sea meets the Indian Ocean. The main island is the largest, about 3,600 square kilometers, roughly the size of the state of Rhode Island, or the country of Luxembourg. But here's where the story really starts. Millions of years ago, we're talking somewhere between 6 and 20 million years, Socotra broke away from the supercontinent that once connected Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. It drifted, it became isolated, and it stayed that way. That isolation is everything. Because when you cut a piece of land off from the rest of the world for millions of years, evolution does something remarkable. It goes off script. The island itself is surprisingly diverse in terrain. You've got dramatic limestone plateaus in the interior, some rising over 1,500 meters. You've got the Hagir Mountains, jagged and ancient, cutting through the center of the island. And then the coastline, stretching white sand beaches and crystal clear water that look almost too beautiful to be real. But don't let the beaches fool you. Socotra is not a tropical paradise in the gentle sense. It's a survivor's landscape. From June to September, the southwest monsoon essentially cuts the island off from the outside world. Winds are so strong and seas so rough that boats can't reach it. Planes are grounded. The island goes dark to the outside world for months at a time. Temperatures are scorching. Rainfall is scarce. And yet, life here doesn't just survive. It thrives. In the most spectacular, strange, and beautiful ways imaginable. Isolation plus harsh climate plus millions of years equals something that looks like it came from another world. Now, this is the part of the video I've been most excited to share with you, because Socotra's biodiversity is genuinely unlike anywhere else on Earth. Let's start with some numbers, because they're staggering. The island is home to over 800 plant species. Of those, approximately 37% are endemic, meaning they grow here and only here. Nowhere else. Not in any garden, not in any forest on the mainland. Only on Socotra. For context, the Galapagos Islands, which are famously unique, have about 30% endemic plant species. Socotra beats that. And then there are the trees. Oh, the trees. The dragon's blood tree. The icon of Socotra, the image you've probably already seen if you've ever searched the island, is the dragon's blood tree. Its scientific name is Dracaena cinnabari. Look at it. Just look at it. It doesn't look like any tree you've ever seen in your life. The trunk rises straight up like a telephone pole, smooth, pale, almost ghostly. And then at the top, the branches explode outward and upward in a perfect, dense umbrella shape. Every branch splits into exactly two. Then those split into two. Then two again. Like a fractal. The canopy is so dense and even that it casts a circular shadow on the ground, which in a hot, dry environment is actually incredibly useful. The shade keeps moisture in the soil. The tree is essentially farming its own water supply. And then there's the resin. Cut into the bark of a dragon's blood tree, and it bleeds. Literally bleeds. A deep, vivid crimson red sap. The locals call it dragon's blood, and it's been famous for thousands of years. Ancient Romans used it as a dye. Medieval painters used it as a pigment. It gives a rich, dark red that synthetic paints still struggle to replicate today. It's been used in traditional medicine for wound healing and digestive issues. And in violin making, certain craftsmen still seek it out to this day. These trees can live for hundreds of years. Some estimates put the oldest dragon's blood trees at over 500 years old. They've been standing on those plateaus, bleeding crimson, while empires rose and fell around them. The bottle tree. Next up, the bottle tree. Scientific name, Adenium obesum socotranum. And the name says it all, obesum. Swollen. Fat. This tree stores water in its enormous, bloated trunk, which can swell to over 1 meter in diameter at the base. In a landscape where water is precious and rainfall unreliable, the bottle tree essentially carries its own reservoir. It's part of a strategy called succulence, packing water into tissue the way a cactus does. But where cacti are all spine and survival, the bottle tree manages something almost cheerful. In spring, before it even grows leaves, it bursts into gorgeous pink flowers, bright, delicate blooms sitting on top of a fat, wrinkled, prehistoric-looking trunk. It's like finding a ballet dancer in the middle of a wrestling match. It just shouldn't work, but it does. The cucumber tree. Show footage or images of the cucumber tree on cliffs. And then, arguably the strangest entry, the cucumber tree. Dendrocysseus socotranus. Here's a fact that will break your brain a little. This is the only tree-sized member of the cucumber family in the world. The cucumber family, as in the same family as the vegetable in your salad. Everywhere else on Earth, cucumbers are vines. Ground level, sprawling, modest plants. But on Socotra, cut off from competition for millions of years, the cucumber went vertical. It evolved into a tree, with a fat, water-storing trunk, small leaves, and little yellow flowers. This is what biologists call insular gigantism, the tendency for species on islands to grow larger than their mainland relatives when competition and predators are removed. Socotra turned a salad ingredient into a tree. Because it could. Endemic wildlife. Bird footage, reptile footage, insect shots. It's not just the plants either. Socotra's animal life is equally remarkable, though it's harder to photograph and often gets overshadowed by the spectacular trees. The island is home to several endemic bird species, including the Socotra sunbird, a small, iridescent bird found nowhere else. There's also the Socotra starling, the Socotra cisticola, and the Socotra sparrow. In total, over a dozen bird species are unique to the archipelago. In the water surrounding the island, you'll find some of the least disturbed coral reef ecosystems remaining anywhere in the world, largely because the monsoon season keeps boat traffic low for half the year, giving the reefs time to recover. Reptiles, particularly geckos and skinks, show remarkable levels of endemism. Scientists are still discovering and formally describing new species on Socotra. New species. In the 21st century, this island is still giving us answers to questions we haven't even thought to ask yet. So we've seen what Socotra looks like. But I want to take a moment and actually answer the question that probably brought you here. Why? Why does this place look so utterly unlike anything else on Earth? There are 4 forces at work here, and together they created something that evolution almost never produces. First, geographic isolation. When Socotra broke away from the African-Arabian landmass, the species that were on it were sealed in, like a biological time capsule. No new species could easily arrive from the mainland. No mainland species could compete with or displace what was already there. So Socotra's plants and animals just kept going, on their own, for millions of years. Second, extreme climate pressure, harsh heat, seasonal drought, violent monsoon winds. These conditions don't just kill species, they sculpt them. Every adaptation you see on those trees, the umbrella canopy, the swollen trunk, the crimson resin, is a solution to a specific environmental problem. Evolution under pressure produces creativity. Third, minimal human interference. Socotra's population has never been large, estimated today at around 60,000 people. And for most of its history, development has been minimal. No large-scale agriculture, no industrial deforestation. The landscape has remained largely intact. Fourth, evolution without mainland competition. On the mainland, species are constantly competing with thousands of other species that have co-evolved alongside them. On an island, you sometimes get a blank slate. Species can fill niches that don't even exist in a normal ecosystem. The cucumber tree exists because there was nothing stopping a cucumber from becoming a tree. Nothing to outcompete it. Nothing to eat it. It just went for it. Put all 4 of these forces together over millions of years, and you get Socotra. You get trees that look like umbrellas. You get trunks that bleed red. You get cucumber trees. You get an island that looks, legitimately, like a set designer from a science fiction film sat down and decided to invent a new planet. Except no one invented it. It just happened, quietly, over millions of years, while the rest of the world wasn't watching. Socotra isn't just a biological wonder. It's a human story too, and a very old one. People have lived on Socotra for at least 2,000 years, and possibly much longer. The indigenous inhabitants speak Socotri, a language so ancient and distinct that linguists classify it as part of the modern South Arabian language family, a branch of Semitic languages that predates Arabic. And here's something remarkable about Socotri. It has no written form. It's a purely spoken language, passed down through generations orally through poetry, song, and storytelling. A whole civilization's worth of knowledge and culture carried entirely in the human voice. Historically, Socotra sat right in the middle of one of the ancient world's most important trade routes, the sea lanes connecting the Mediterranean, East Africa, Arabia, and India. Merchants knew it well. The island appears in ancient Greek texts, including the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, a 1st century Greek trading manual, described as an important stop for resupply and commerce. Arab geographers wrote about it extensively. The dragon's blood resin was a prized trade commodity for centuries, shipped across the ancient world alongside frankincense, myrrh, and spices. Socotra was, in its time, economically significant. That connection to the outside world shaped the island's culture, but never overwhelmed it. The Socotri people developed a way of life deeply in tune with their extraordinary environment. Fishing, pastoralism, and careful stewardship of their unique landscape. In 2008, UNESCO made it official. Socotra was designated a World Heritage Site, recognized specifically for its outstanding universal value from a biodiversity and ecological standpoint. The UNESCO citation called the archipelago one of the most important sites for global biodiversity conservation, placing it in the same category as the Great Barrier Reef, the Galapagos, and the Serengeti. That designation brought international attention, conservation funding, and a formal framework for protection. It was a landmark moment for an island that had spent millions of years evolving in obscurity. But here's where the story gets harder to tell. Because Socotra, this irreplaceable, once-in-a-geological-era place, is under serious threat. And the threats are accelerating. Climate change is altering the monsoon patterns and increasing temperatures that the island species evolved over millions of years to tolerate within a specific range. Dragon's blood trees, which are already classified as vulnerable, are not regenerating at the rate they're dying. Studies have projected that without intervention, large portions of the dragon's blood tree population could collapse by the end of the century. Overgrazing by goats has been a persistent problem. Goats eat seedlings before they can establish, which means that even where adult trees still stand, they're not being replaced. You can have a forest of ancient trees with a completely empty understory. No next generation. Development pressures have increased as the island has opened up to tourism and outside investment. New roads, new construction, and the introduction of invasive species threaten habitats that evolve with zero exposure to outside interference. And then there's the largest threat of all, political instability. Socotra is part of Yemen, a country that has been torn apart by civil war since 2015. Conservation programs have been disrupted. International researchers have limited or no access. The UNESCO designation offers little protection when the governing structures around the island are in crisis. In 2018, the UAE briefly occupied Socotra as part of broader regional maneuvering, building infrastructure rapidly and altering the island's landscape in ways that alarmed conservationists. The situation remains fragile. The island that survived millions of years of geological time may not survive the next 100 years of human history without serious, sustained intervention. Socotra is proof of something that I find endlessly humbling about this planet. Evolution, given enough time and enough space, produces wonders that no human imagination could design. There is no CGI team, no concept artist, no science fiction writer who could have invented the dragon's blood tree from scratch. It had to be grown, slowly, over millions of years, in isolation, under pressure, and it's here, right now, on this planet, on this island, It looks like another world because it is another world, one that developed parallel to ours on its own rules for millions of years. The Galapagos get more attention. The Amazon gets more funding. But Socotra, quiet, remote, caught in a country at war, is arguably the most biologically irreplaceable place on Earth. Socotra is proof of something that I find endlessly humbling about this planet. Evolution, given enough time and enough space, produces wonders that no human imagination could design. There is no CGI team, no concept artist, no science fiction writer who could have invented the dragon's blood tree from scratch. It had to be grown, slowly, over millions of years, in isolation, under pressure, and it's here, right now, on this planet, on this island. It looks like another world because it is another world, one that developed parallel to ours on its own rules for millions of years. The Galapagos get more attention. The Amazon gets more funding. But Socotra, quiet, remote, caught in a country at war, is arguably the most biologically irreplaceable place on Earth.
If we lose it, we don't just lose trees, we lose millions of years of evolutionary history that can never be recreated. We lose species that can exist nowhere else. We lose the living laboratory that science is still only beginning to understand. So tell people about it, share this video, learn about it. Because sometimes the first step in saving something extraordinary is simply knowing that it exists. Socotra's still here, still extraordinary.